both guys have had to go through that negativity where almost like their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-worth was sort of mentally challenged. You could see the way Joshua came back for a lot of fights, even some wins.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Boxing Scene's Top Stories, only on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. I am George DeMatteis. Download the app where apps are available for the full ProBox TV experience, in which you get to hear great words from our champions like Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi here on Top Stories. Well, a week after the Canelo Berlanga fight, the IBF heavyweight belt will be on the line when Daniel Dubois fights Anthony Joshua in London. Now, Dubois' promoter Frank Warren says he believes Joshua knows he's facing the biggest puncher he's confronted since his 2017 epic bout against Vladimir Klitschko. Now, the quote from Warren is this: listen, he knows him. He sparred with Dubois. There's this big debate about what happened in that sparring, and I've heard two versions of it. One of the reasons we signed him, meaning Dubois, and I sponsored him was because of what I was being told, and that was from people who were there. All right, Chris, what do you make of Frank Warren's comments?
I actually agree. I think Dubois is a very dangerous puncher. He's big. He's a true super heavyweight. He's going to be pretty much eye to eye with punch for punch with Joshua in terms of power. He's one of the bigger punchers in the division today, and is a very dangerous guy. And he showed durability too in that Ergovich fight. He took a lot of big right hands from Ergovich and fought a really, really gritty fight where he had to dig down deep, show a lot of chin, show a lot of heart. He was a big underdog in that fight. I was rating Ergovich very highly. And Dubois basically beat the bully that night, bullied the bully. And that was very impressive for me, and I think this is a very dangerous fight. And I think Joshua and his team understands that, especially because I don't think anyone's seen the best of Daniel Dubois yet. He's really coming into his own. He's turned a corner. The Jarrell Miller fight was that first corner, and then that Ergovich fight was a big step for him in terms of what he really needs. And I think that really what he needs is confidence. And big wins like that on the world stage will do that. He's got the physicality, he's got the athleticism, he has the power. Apparently, he has the chin and the heart as well, which is funny because he was always touted as a guy who didn't have heart because of the eye injury versus Joe Joyce, and then with the stoppage loss to Usyk, in which there was a lot going on that night. But listen, in hindsight, when you look back at how good Usyk is, I think you're going to get more of a pass on that. But Dubois has shown that he has stepped up and turned a corner. Now, the fact that these guys have sparred together, that means something. I've fought several sparring partners in real fights in my career. It changes. It changes the dynamic. It changes your mindset going into the fight. And as we know, even going into the Andy Ruiz fight, Joshua apparently had some issues in sparring, got hurt. So that's not the most foreign thing that Joshua could have been hurt or was touched up in a sparring session. So I think it does add another layer to this. But either way, I think it's a great fight.
You know what? I like the fight for a lot of reasons. One of the things, the momentum of these two guys is a big reason. Both of these guys have had to overcome a negative spell in their careers, so to speak, and to be able to show the character that they've shown, especially Dubois. Dubois overcame a negative spell before his character was ever sort of revealed. So it was a bad sort of first impression because we're hearing about this guy and he's got like all this hype behind him and he's a big puncher and we're expecting to see some things. And then all of a sudden there's this sort of mild, almost quitting against Joe Joyce and against Usyk, where he kind of just put up his white flag a little bit too early for some, especially in the Usyk fight. And that was sort of a first impression because those were really the first fights where he got any kind of pushback because he'd been such a big puncher and he'd been such a guy who people were looking at and talking positively about. And we were waiting for him to raise himself to the levels where we could see him tested against some of the opposition that could test him. So once they did, it was a bad first impression, and it's tough to overcome a bad first impression, man. You only get one chance to make a first impression. So the fact that he was able to overcome that, the first impression he gave was excellent. But then all of a sudden he sort of fell off after the Ruiz fight, and even coming back, he never really looked very confident. And both guys have had to go through that negativity where almost like their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-worth was sort of mentally challenged. You could see the way Joshua came back for a lot of fights, even some wins. He didn't look like the same Joshua for a while, But come into play now. That's why fights have to happen, not just that they have to happen, but they have to happen at the right time. This is why I'm so adamant about boxing doing this, where it's not just guys not fighting. It's also guys, by the time they fight, they're not fighting at the right time. Where in this situation, there wasn't a big clamoring about Joshua Dubois. But the fact that this fight's happening right now, when they're both in this ascendancy, especially after having come back from negative spells, I feel like they're going to have double the confidence, because now they know they can rise above the negativity that can surround them at times. So they're feeling at their most confident, I think, because they've not only have they risen in their career, but they've risen despite opposition, mental and physical. So I think it's going to be an exciting fight, and I think both sides actually have a real reason to be excited. Then you bring into the sparring, into question the sparring, a way it may or may not have happened. Listen, that only adds to the debate. Champ, you mentioned that it was before the Ruiz fight. If it was before the Ruiz fight, yes, there was some. I do remember there was some talk about Joshua not having looked good in the gym or having been hurt in the gym before the Ruiz fight. If Dubois is the one that did that,
I don't know.
Then of course,
I don't know if it was actually that. I'm saying that there is a history where Joshua has had issues in sparring.
Yeah. So I mean, it's something we can bring to the topic of discussion. But remember one thing. Even this supposed sparring, it was before the overcoming of this negativity. You know what I'm saying? So I think whether it was Joshua that got the better of it or whether it was Dubois that got the better of it, both of these guys have been on a long haul since this point where they've, kind of come crashing down and come back up and risen above the ashes, so to speak. But I think both have a reason to really be confident, because right now they are doing the best boxing possibly of their careers. With Joshua, it's debatable whether it's now, whether it's around the time he fought Klitschko. I think he's looking amazing, for the best he's looked since that time. With Dubois, we're seeing him sort of live up to the expectation that was always expected of him, that was always talked about with him. So we're gonna wonder if he can continue to rise at that point. Really, really good fight, and I think it's happening at a great time for both guys, where they're both at their most confident.
Yeah, definitely going to be a great fight. By the way, Anthony Joshua, undefeated when he fights at Wembley Stadium, 4-0, all 4 wins by way of knockout. Dubois has fought just once at Wembley Arena, and now his first time at Wembley Stadium. So maybe a little bit of an advantage there for Anthony Joshua. And of course, we will have the big fight recap of that fight when it happens, or after it happens, on September 14th. ProBox TV, always with the best analysis, and we will continue to give you that information as well here on Top Stories. And don't forget to scan the QR code, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can get the best live fight series in all of boxing, Wednesday night fights. The next one, September 11th, and then 3 days after that, that huge card featuring Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga. I'm George DeMatteis. This is Boxing Scene's Top Stories.
He's the pride of Guadalajara, the Mexican maestro, the unified super middleweight champion of the world, Canelo Alvarez. His challenger, undefeated knockout artist and pride of Puerto Rico, Edgar Berlanga. It's prime time.
Canelo versus Berlanga, plus Lara versus Garcia. Saturday, September 14th, live on PBC pay-per-view on Prime Video.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.